Welcome back to another edition of the Show Me Hoops podcast. We are the number one podcast for basketball coaches and basketball fans in the state of Missouri. We're going to talk today again about Coach Lennis McFerrin. If you missed my part one where I talked about Coach Mack and just kind of what he meant to me as a younger coach and the relationship that I was able to establish with him, be sure and check that one out. Today I want to dive a little bit more into the time that I got to spend with him when we did work together. I did not play for Coach McFerrin. I did another series on Coach Ronnie Cookson, who was my high school coach. Coach McFerrin and I really didn't know each other well. We just knew each other from a distance. I more, was studying him and trying to learn whatever I could from him, would pick the phone up and call him from time to time, and then we got a chance to work together. So I want to talk a little bit more about that today. He was my boss. At Scott County Central, he was the principal, and I was the coach. And Coach McFerrin was a very interesting guy to work for. I talked yesterday in the other podcast about, he was just so meticulous in the way he taught drills. Well, he was that way as a boss also. I can remember one time, he came in the locker room and somebody had left some shorts on the floor or something like that. He didn't like it, so he... one thing about Coach Mack, he does not cut any corners. He tells you exactly how he feels. He's not a jerk about it, but he's very direct. So, I kind of got the hint, hey, I need to make sure these guys straighten up around here. So I really worked hard to keep that locker room clean. And one day he walked back in the locker room, and it's really clean. You could almost eat off the floor in there. I kept it so clean. Coach McFerrin walked in. You could tell he looked around kind of like, wow, this is pretty impressive. But he wasn't going to give me the satisfaction of telling me good job. He took his finger and he wiped it along one of the window sills in the locker room. There was a window between my office and the locker room, and he wiped it along there to try to see if he could find some dust. And I kind of looked at him like, man, are you kidding me? Like, I worked so hard to keep this clean, and now you're going to check for dust in here? But that was just Coach Mack. He was very meticulous. He was very detail-oriented. It's one of the reasons he was such a great coach. So getting into the basketball now, Coach Mack did this drill that I want to pass along to everybody, and there's a concept, whether you're going to use this drill or not, that I think can apply to every team. And I can give you examples where teams did it to us and it hurt us. And he did this drill. It was called point wing deny. And point wing deny was basically a W drill. If you can imagine on a basketball floor, if you're standing under the basket looking out, it's like a W. So if the defender started out on the left wing for the offense is going to pass it into the left wing. There's a defender on this side guarding an offensive player one-on-one without the ball, and he's denying the wing. They're going back and forth, back and forth. And then at one point, the coach has got the ball up top. He'd pass the ball over to the right wing. There'd be a second, coach, manager, another player standing over there on the right wing. So when the ball got past the right wing, that defender had to go from denying the left wing. Now he's got to jump to the ball because the ball's on the other side of the floor. Now he's in the middle of the floor. Well, when that happens, the offensive player walks into that left block and makes a flash to the elbow. Now, he's coming towards the ball on the ball side at the elbow. So now the defender's got to deny that flash cut. Offensive player goes down to the post, so you got to kind of flip your hips and look over the other shoulder, follow him down to the post. And now they're going to go out to kind of the right corner, under the right wing. He's going to deny that other side. So you got to deny the left wing, you got to deny a flash cut. You got to kind of flip and deny the post. Now you got to deny the right wing. That's a great drill for two things, really. One, just denying the ball. And number two, jumping to the ball. You're in a deny position, and now the ball got swung to the other side of the floor. You've got to get off your man and get towards the ball. This is a great drill. And you've probably seen something like this before. This was just happened to be Coach McFerrin's favorite drill. And, it's just a terrific drill. And the way he taught it, going back to wiping his finger on the windowsill, he was so meticulous in everything he did. So he took his time and he went through it and he really got everybody, got you down in the right position, got your hand in the right position. But this is the concept that he used out of that drill. This is what he applied to his teams. Now listen to this. Coach McFerrin, his whole philosophy on defense, or a big part of his philosophy on defense, was that ball pressure that we talked about in part 1. The ball pressure was intense. So that dribbler is really wanting to get rid of the ball. And then Coach McFerrin's whole thing was he would figure out where your entry point was in your offense. Like, so say you're running a motion offense and your entry point 80% of the time is the right wing. Coach McFerrin is going to take that away from you. He is going to make you enter the ball into a different place to start your offense. Think about how disruptive that would be to your team. And I'll give you an example of when a team did that to us. Maybe you're not a man-to-man team. Maybe you don't have the kind of ball pressure or the kind of athletes to get out and deny the wing. But trust me, you can still do this. And the concept of disrupting a team by taking away their first pass, where they really want to start the offense, I'm telling you, it is really, really disruptive. When I was coaching, one of the best players I ever coached was a guard named Dom Johnson. I talk about Dom a lot on here. We were playing his senior year. We ended up finishing the season 29-4. We won the state championship in Class 1 in Missouri. And Dom averaged about 30 a game. He averaged right under 30 points a game. 2 of our losses that year were to a team in our area called Scott City. They were a 3A school. They were a bigger school than us, but we were good. They were good. Scott City had a heck of a team that year. They had a 6'9" kid in the middle. They had a couple good guards. They had a kid on the wing named Mark Dannemuller. There's about 6'4", 6'5". Mark's actually the coach at Scott City now. Mark was a heck of a player in high school, but they had a really, really nice team. They were way bigger than we were, and that 6'9" kid in the middle, he gave us some problems. But what really, really disrupted us, what they did well defensively to us, was Dom was our point guard. And they understood that as our point guard, he was also our leading scorer. Now, Dom was a smart player. He didn't just come down and jack it up. What I tried to teach Dom was an offensive concept that I picked up when I went to watch Duke practice. I heard Coach K talk about some of the great guards that they'd had and what he tried to get his guards to do, like a point guard like a Jason Williams or Bobby Hurley or whoever. He would teach those point guards to be dangerous on your second catch. So in other words, your first catch as a point guard a lot of times is the outlet. You bring the ball up the floor, and then you make that first pass to kind of get the offense going. And then once you start moving without the ball, when you catch it the second time, you're really not the point guard anymore. You're just a player. So, move the ball early as a point guard. And then when you catch it the second time, a lot of times you're one-on-one by this point. The defense is focusing somewhere else. So Scott City had picked up on that we did this with Dom. Dom would give the ball up early, and then he would cut and move through, and they were actually playing a 2-3 zone. But Scott City shaded that 2-3 zone all night to not allow the pass back to Dom. That was really their whole point. And that sounds simple. Well, yeah, deny the ball from their best player. But it was the way they did it. It was like they distorted that zone to not let us pass it to one part of the floor. To where the other part of the floor, hey, if you want to throw it over there, that's fine. But we're just not going to let you throw it over here. So now, applying that back to what Coach McFerrin did, he would take away where you wanted to enter the ball on offense. And that is such a disruptive thing to an offense. If for no other reason you're making them play through the other side of the floor, or you're making other kids, have to handle the ball more that night, you're making other kids possibly have to shoot more if they're not disciplined enough to be patient and let the ball come back around. Just that whole concept of you're making them basically play backwards is what you're doing. And Coach McFerrin was a master at that. And if you look back at some of the accomplishments that he had on defense, 1990, they won the state championship game. I think they held their opponent to like 17 points in the state finals. I can remember another time they played Vashon, who's a powerhouse in Missouri. back in those days, Vashon was Class 4, which is the biggest class at that time. Charleston was Class 3. Vashon came down here to play Charleston one year when Coach Mack was still at Charleston, and they held Vashon to 4 points and a half. Vashon won the state championship in Class 4. Charleston held him to 4 points and a half. How do you do something like that? How do you do something like that to another team who has really, really good players? You do that by having some very good concepts, very disciplined players, and like I said, Coach McFerrin had that ball pressure. They were so good at guarding the ball because of the way he taught it. Listen to part 1 of the podcast. And then number 2, they would take away your first pass. And so I would just ask all of you coaches out there that listen to this, think about that as it applies to your team. Maybe you can't pressure the same way they did. Maybe you can't get out on the wing the same way. Maybe you're a zone team. But what do you do to try to disrupt the rhythm of the other offense? I know some zone coaches teach their kids to kind of play in the gaps with the backhand and, shade things to one side of the floor. But what are you going to do to disrupt that first pass that gets their offense started? Because I guarantee you, if you start thinking about taking away that first pass or making that first pass, even if you make it harder where they're catching the ball, 5-7 feet out further than they're normally catching it, now the first pass can't lead to the second pass. Or maybe the first pass has just got to lead back to, hey, throw it back up top and reset this thing because we're too far off to start running anything. It's just something to think about, and it's one of the simple things that Coach McFerrin did that he was so good at. And like most things in basketball, the teams that win are just really, really good at simple, and he was certainly one of those coaches. So, hey, thanks for listening. I always enjoy doing this. I enjoy the comments and the feedback that I get. Check out the website, www.justwintoday.com. People always ask how they can get involved, how they can help out. I say if you like something, share it. Just tell other people what we're doing. There's a lot of things on there for teachers, coaches, students, parents, athletes. Just good advice, positive stuff, scholarship information, study tips, you name it. It's all on there. It's basically a website for school people. So if you get a chance, please check it out. And appreciate everybody listening. Have an awesome day. JWT.